Good. Gentlemen, again, in terms of diversity, we're not great there on this panel. I'll have a chat with Kamel about that one, but it's fine. We have true experts. That's the most important part. Could you please briefly introduce yourselves, your experience in this specific topic, and we'll start with you, Lars. Is that okay?
So my name is Lars Weber. I'm into cybersecurity for almost 25 years. I have the scars and the wounds to prove this. And I'm currently acting as head of non-financial risk management at Spuerkeess.
Jerome?
Thank you for inviting me. I'm Jérôme Duchesne. I'm the head of IT for Schiltz, which is an asset manager, a global asset manager based in the UK mainly, but we have loads of countries where we distribute our products. Cybersecurity is not my main area, but I am responsible for InfoSec as part of my IT role. I would say my domain of expertise today is clearly, well, if I say DORA, am I unique saying that? I mean, this is really the focus, I guess, for most of us as we move.
Oh, yes, absolutely.
I'm Jean-Louis Schiltz. I'm a practicing lawyer, tech law advisor, mainly active in tech, and I'm a professor at university where I'm also teaching tech law.
Former minister, should I add, and many other roles and different companies and boards and so on and so on. So a well-known figure in Luxembourg and fintech, obviously too. Right, let's go directly into this wonderful topic. Lars and Jerome, what do you see as the most significant cybersecurity threats currently facing the financial sector? Lars, you might be the one to answer that one.
Well, no.
You did mention that you had scars and wounds, so share a bit of that with us.
I will not show the scars, but I think unfortunately we don't have one significant threat. Unfortunately we have a lot of different threats. And if you are in the financial sector, I think you will have to cover the whole landscape of threats. And I think there are different actors doing different things, and none of these, let's say, crises or incidents or attacks should be left unattended. So I think you have to cover all the different threats that are facing the financial sector, different banks, or even the industry now, and I think there is not one single one that you can focus on it, and that's also the difficulty of the whole task, that you have to cover the whole landscape, and be it just malware attacking your infrastructure or an organized crime group trying to hack your infrastructure. Your payment systems are constantly on the target of malicious actors. So basically, I cannot give you one single threat that should be your priority. You have a lot of priority, and the difficulty of the task is to cover them all to the most extent possible. Voilà.
Thank you, Jerome.
Well, I don't know about you, sorry, Lars, but one thing that we've noticed at Schiltz recently is the fact that we have the budgets to protect ourselves against, as you say, many aspects of security. What I've seen and noticed, specifically in Luxembourg, is the fact that some small companies, ICT providers, for instance, do not have the same level of protections as us, but we delegate services to them, and attacks could come from this side.
Right.
We've seen them a lot in 2024, clearly.
A weak point.
The weak point, clearly,
the
yes.
Weak point could be
the full supply of chain issue.
Yes. It's in your view, the budget aspect is key here.
The budget, I would say, but also the priorities. I mean, which is linked to the budget. If you want to make profits in a small company like this, maybe you don't invest into the back office. You invest into what can be attractive for your clients, which might not be security, unfortunately.
Okay. Do you believe that also includes the PSF companies?
I hope we don't have CSSF here, but
Be careful.
I would say
I run a PSF company.
So no. No, I think PSF are much more protected due to the regulation. But startups clearly are the weak points for me at the moment.
Right. Jean-Louis, you being the lawyer on this panel, sorry to say, but how have recent regulations addressed these evolving cyber threats? What's the current situation?
Well, I think that the main issue for me is that there are 25 pieces of legislation which come out every week or every month. Somebody told me, and that is a civil servant, that the European Commission has enacted 50,000 pages of legislation over the last 5 years. And then if we dig a little bit deeper into this, once you're familiar with all these texts, whether it's DORA, NIS 1, NIS 2, GDPR, PSD 3 and whatever, then you're faced with the issue that the legislation on the one hand is principle-based, which means that proportionality is an important feature, accountability is an important feature. Risk-based approach obviously is central, and at the same time the texts are very detailed on the implementation side already, and in my experience the main challenge for those that are in charge of putting up these systems and advising on putting up this system is actually to marry the two, be compliant with each and every line, and yet be compliant with the principle, and the principles such as accountability and proportionality, they all entail an element of judgment, and that's where the difficulty comes from. I'm going to stop there, but I want to have the floor later on the PSF aspect.
Oh, thanks. Wonderful. I love your view on that one. But so Jerome, Lars, maybe Jerome to start with. Jean-Louis was just giving us some numbers, saying that the increasing pressure of regulation on financial institutions. What does that mean? How does it translate for you directly? How do you keep up?
It's a very good question. I guess
it's ChatGPT. It wasn't me writing it.
I guess there are multiple challenges. Again, I take a real life example. Schiltz is a group, meaning that regulation is not only CSSF,
right.
It's not only ESMA, it's also FINMA, it's also FCA, and I'm sure loads of people share the same concern when we are part of a group. And sometimes regulations are not aligned between each other. CSF is usually way more advanced than the others. When you are a small entity which is managed and supervised by the CSF locally in Luxembourg, how do you convince your group that you need to stick to some local circulars which are very, very restrictive and are not the same as your group? So that's where we see challenges, not because of the regulation here. We believe it's actually well done and makes sense. It's more the fact that you need to convince many other people to stick to it. And Dora, talking about it again, will have that challenge, because you will have to convince some suppliers which are not even part of Europe to stick to regulation.
Right, Lars?
I can totally agree on all that has been said now. And I think there's another aspect that makes the task very challenging, is that on top of all the compliance issues and the work that comes from being compliant or getting compliant, you still have your production to run. So basically this comes up to changing a flat tire on your car, but you're not allowed to stop, or at least not stop for a long time. So this is something that really makes the task even more difficult, on top of having different regulations covering the same topic but in a different way. And as I always say, you can have, if you're really unlucky, you have an incident and you have to report it at 3 different levels, and with a different template, different scales, different timelines. And this is something that's very hard to organize and to keep up, to get the same level of quality over time, and to stay compliant. So this is very, very hard to just get it on operationally.
And contrary to Schiltz, Spuerkeess is local only. You have various activities, but I suppose that is also something that you can't do any pooling from other
we don't
parts
have any
of the
leverage
That's it.
of coming from a group where certain bigger.
So it hits you directly.
DORA texts have been analyzed by somebody else.
I think you're lucky, to be frank.
Yeah.
Jean-Louis, from a legal perspective, what are the pitfalls that your client or clients, or what you see from the market, these financial institutions encounter when trying to comply with these regulations?
Well, I think that, as I said before, it's being compliant at the principle level, at the level of the principles and each and every line of the text. But I'm going to give you perhaps two examples. One which is a positive example, and the other one which is a big question mark to me. The positive example is, and as Jérôme alluded to as well, the first regulator in the EU, at least to my knowledge, who agreed that a financial entity used a cloud service provider was the CSSF before everyone else. And the principles that have been worked out by the CSSF actually were, to a very large extent, translated into what we see in Europe. So that's, I think, a very positive example.
Message,
and if we look at DORA and others, I could imagine that we follow the same route. The second example is also a legal example, but it's more of a question mark for me today. DORA is built about these critical and important third-party service providers. And if I'm oversimplifying a bit, these critical and important service providers are going to be regulated. There's going to be a lead regulator, there's going to be other regulators coming in, etc., etc. So all good, all fine. So attracted to the regulatory scope, to speak. And then with that, we have two issues that come with that. One which Jérôme has already highlighted. If I'm a critical and important service provider and I'm using others who are not regulated,
yes.
How does that come together, and who's liable at the end of the day? And then if these providers are regulated through an EU text, do we still need an additional layer of regulation in Luxembourg? I'm advocating for certain things in that context for many, many years. I know that it's a controversial view, but I think that in the context of DORA and in the context of implementing the rules around these and the systems and the procedures around these critical and important service providers, we cannot escape from a discussion on whether the support PSF should continue to exist alongside these critical providers under DORA, or how do the two come together? If I'm a critical and important provider, do I need the PSF license, for example, in addition, or should we, at the risk of being totally provoked, get rid of the PSF support system? That's my question.
Yes, it's a question. It's a difficult one to answer, but maybe from a PSF, a support PSF perspective, I think it's very structuring. And when providing a service, critical outsourcing to a financial institution, it creates some trust level, and it also makes the life of the financial institution easier when notifying the CSSF that they're going to rely on a PSF. All the documentation is ready, the technical framework, the IT security rules are close to what you're expecting.
Well, I think that all this is in the making, and our thinking is also in the making. And if, for example, I'm a small provider and I'm working directly with a bank, or if I'm a small provider and I'm working with a critical and important third-party service provider, I think that small provider cannot escape from all regulation.
Correct.
And that could be the traditional PSF support.
Yes.
But then, if I have one of these critical and important providers, then the question comes whether that provider needs two licenses or one license, or by having one license he gets the other one automatically, or or things like that. But I think it's time to discuss this, and my plea would be to try to avoid red tape as much as possible on this.
My view is the fact, I think between PSF and a company being DORA compliant, you could have some competitive disadvantage for the PSF, which will not potentially be aligned to DORA. And as we say, DORA, well, PSF is known in Luxembourg. It's not known anywhere else in Europe. If you deal with Luxembourgish company and you are, I don't know where, in France or in Spain, will you trust a DORA compliant company or a PSF? This is where we stand today.
Well, if we consider the PSF is DORA compliant, then...
Is it? That's the question.
Yeah, should be. All right. Interesting topic. It's slightly drifting away from what the topic of today is, but I think it is an interesting point.
It's regulation put in motion, though, sorry.
Yes.
So 50% we're on.
Yeah, we're spot on. All right. Okay, again, Lars, what are the essential components of an effective operational resilience strategy in your institution specifically, or in general terms?
I think before you start talking about operational resilience, you have to keep in mind that it's not only cyber. So operational resilience goes far beyond just cyber. You have also IT issues that can also have a huge impact on your operational resilience. So you have to see the whole operational resilience on a much broader scale, not just covering the cyber aspects, but all IT issues and also other disruptions, being the building disruptions, which can also have an impact on all your operational processes. So this is the first, and in my view, the most important thing, that you have to keep in mind what is important for your company to run, to be online and to work. And then you can drill it down to cyber threats, but not only. You have to have the holistic view. You have to cover the whole range of threats and vulnerabilities in order to start having a concept that covers your operational resilience as a whole. So this, in my opinion, is the most important aspect. And it's not the technical aspect. You really have to understand what is important, what is vital for your company, and you have to focus on these. And then you can break it down at a technical level, but before, just keep it at an operational level. What is the chain of value that's created? And then you can drill down.
To a proper mapping of that.
Yeah, you have to understand what is important for this company, what is important for this company to work, to run, and then you can see what are the underlying systems and the weakness of these systems.
Well, same question to you, Jerome.
I think Lars smashed it. The challenges that I've seen in multiple companies, not only Schroders, is to identify the critical functions.
Yeah.
It sounds like it's a basic thing. Not everybody knows. Not everybody knows. Is HR critical for your company? Probably not, but some might say yes. Is trading important? For some banks it could be, for some others it's not even important. And the consideration there, which is step one of understanding your ops resilience strategy, is to identify the business critical processes. If you don't do that from day one, you will not succeed.
Yes.
For me, that's step one.
But don't you think that part is actually benefiting the consumers? Because depends on the risk appetite or risk assessment of each institution. So you were mentioning HR. It could be actually seen as critical for a given institution, not by another one, but that also gives maybe some differences, because some mean people could say that for banks, the only thing that changes is the logo.
Correct. But if you start your assessment with the wrong assumptions on criticality, you will rate everything as critical. You will spend money on things which are not deemed important, and you will fail. That's why I think it's very important to filter.
Yeah.
Can also add that you cannot compare one bank to another on that level. Even if they are active in the same country, there are banks that are focused on retail customers, other investment banks, so they don't have the same risk profile, and therefore they will have a different setup.
Yeah, but in the same vertical, if you compete. So you mentioned retail.
Yeah.
What's the difference between bank A and B?
Well, if
It's a
it's
question.
on
It's not.
the customer base, they may be the same, but you will have different approaches, different priorities, different strategies, and depending on the strategy, some processes will be more important
Right.
than other,
Okay.
and therefore you will also have to adapt your technical setup to cover these specific topics beforehand, and therefore at some point you can compare, but if you once you go into the details, it's not the same picture.
So, Jean-Louis, the current regulation, does it support or hinder this?
Well, I think that there's a number of texts out there which are setting clear frameworks. Yes, for example, there's pretty clear rules on what you need to do in terms of continuity.
Yes.
The deadlines are pretty clear. That's for the positive side of things, but then again, and I don't know if there's positive or negative, it can be positive or negative. Then there's the whole judgment part and the whole assessment part, which my two colleagues now have been describing from a practical point of view. And at the risk of sounding really trivial, I think that this is also perhaps an area where Rec AI could help in the future. If you have, for example, a cyber incident, you've probably personal data that are likely compromised, so you have to go to the CNPD, you have to go to the CSSF, you have to go to the CERTO, I don't even know what it's called under DORA, etc., etc. So that is in my eyes a complicating factor. The other side of the coin, obviously, is that every regulator will tell you, well, I'm in charge of what I'm in charge, basically, and that's why we have multiple layers of regulation and regulators. But if the result of DORA would be that DORA would be the central framework, I think that would be a very positive result, and the next positive result would be if in 3 years' time we don't have a DORA 2.
All right, interesting. Looking towards the future, what future trends do you foresee in the intersection of cybersecurity, operational resilience, and regulation in the financial sector? So, Jerome, that's for you. You're delighted with this question, aren't you?
Yeah. Difficult to say it's a trend, but joining back to Jean-Louis what just said, harmonizing things is for me the key point. I hope, and we all have the hope, that DORA will be the key driver to that. And it's not yet there, to be frank. When you look at what DORA is proposing today, it says to all of the industry players that they have to align to certain standards. That's fine. But how do you leverage to the DORA compliant tick box from another company somewhere else? Can you say because they are DORA compliant there is nothing to do? No, you can't. You still have to do the exercise. You still have to go through the full supplier chain to understand your processes and the risk appetite and everything. So for me, it's not a trend, it's a hope really. It's a wish.
Okay.
Can we leverage on DORA or any other European or mondial regulation to do less work and be more efficient in the regulatory space? That's my view.
Lars?
Well, as Jerome, I'm also hoping that the whole requirements that everybody tries to implement now will lead to a situation where you will not have, or at least less likely to have, a company that's going rogue because they are not doing their homework and they don't have any cybersecurity. And as we have all seen, most of the time the weakest link will be the link that will break, and then you can have a chain reaction where or a lot of companies will have trouble because one critical supplier has a major flaw. And I think the alignment that comes with the regulation will help us avoid the big mistakes, and that everybody has also the same understanding. Again, this is a hope, but I think without the regulation we would never have any chance of achieving this. So I hope that we will have a common level of security, a minimum level of security, and on top the companies or the providers will have the challenge to distinguish themselves from their competition by going even further. But at least we don't have any company having nothing in place and then triggering chain reactions that cannot be controlled.
Jean-Louis, based on your experience as a lawyer, but also former minister, is Jerome's wish or dream going to be fulfilled? Do you see any harmonization?
Well, I think we basically agree on that, I think. And from a practical point of view, we have these technical standards that are implemented all the time. Well, let me take this one step back, perhaps. The good news actually is that DORA was not enacted against the background of two banks that went down, because of an IT incident. Had that been the case, we would probably have a very restrictive legislation which no one would be able to cope with. We have seen this in other areas in the past. Harmonization can also be triggered by the European Commission and by the European regulators, and I think we're going to move into a world where the regulators will be more and more faced with requests. How can you, despite the fact that we need legislation, which is legislation and which is a clear text, how can you help companies implement by providing more templates or more tick-the-box systems or things like that? Because I've heard Minister Mark saying a couple of days ago that she was very much in favor of the next 5 years at the European level, at least in the IT sector, being about implementation and not about legislation. And what I just gave is one example of that.
Thank you very much. Okay, so you're all senior employees and experienced people. If you had to give one piece of advice to a financial institution, what would it be? Around cybersecurity, obviously, around the topic, not in general terms, right?
I have one. The reliance that we all have on the GAFAs, I mean Google, Amazon, and Microsoft.
Right.
The aggregation or the concentration risk that we are creating today with moving to the cloud platforms is huge. I don't think it's understood well by our business. And our role as IT professionals is to go back to them and explain in clear terms the risks that we have by moving to those cloud platforms. Imagine tomorrow Microsoft is hacked. It could happen. It will happen, for sure.
It's probably less an issue for them than it could be for a small bank that has small cybersecurity teams. No? What do you think?
Frankly, I would say that half of Luxembourg industry players rely on Microsoft very heavily. And Microsoft is an example.
Yeah, of course.
Google is the same. Amazon is the same. For me, it's a massive risk, and we need to be extremely clear on the fact that we are relying on them. Multi-cloud platforms is not something that is implemented by default. It's too expensive. We rely heavily on massive providers. And that's a worry for me.
All right. This interesting point.
So if I may just take one step back and just the main topic for me is that your management has to understand that we are in an arms race and that stop investing is not an option. I think that's the main message that I would like to give.
All right. Jean-Louis?
Don't forget that IT is first and foremost an enabler. So we should come back to that a little.
Business comes first.
A little bit. Well, if business goes down, there's no business. So that's the other face of the coin. But I mean, we have DORA. That's now the centerpiece, as I said, and let's go and implement it. And I'm glad, incidentally, that the head of the CSSF has been listening to all what we've been saying.
I like CSF, by the way. They're great.
Yeah, of course. Gentlemen, key takeaways for the audience. Who would like to start? Lars, you're right next to me. A key takeaway.
Well, as I said, I think you have to be clear on it's the management's responsibility to ensure that operational resilience is a topic. The tone comes from the top, and you have to invest in order to stay compliant over time. All
right, investment is key there.
I agree. involvement of the top management. IT is an enabler. I fully agree with Jean-Louis. However, nothing can work without IT today, and we need to be extremely clear with the management that there are some risks linked to cybersecurity and IT nowadays, and there is an investment to be made there. No choice.
Final word for you.
In the old world, in the non-digital world, we accepted that there were risks, and we never advocated in favor of zero risk. Let's do the same in the IT world.
Gentlemen, thank you very much. I think we can give them a big round of applause. Thank you.